push, but if I had to pick one, I would pick Oregon. But that's just the way I look at it.
You have to. We're checking you for JR. There's 6 groups. You can't push on 2 of them. All right.
Maybe I'm a homer. Call me a homer. It is what it is.
We're going to linebacker.
You fight for everything you believe in. Each other. This program. We fight tonight. Fight on 3. 1, 2, 3. Fight.
I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship.
Something stupid is coming out of his mouth. I don't know.
Maybe it's just my age. He needs his vote pulled immediately. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name.
Let's talk about something good about Justin Frye. What are you doing?
The season of dreams. Ohio State, my guys, are either the best or the second best program in the history of college football.
This guy is a bonehead. They love him.
I question your judgment as an adult. I really do.
I was a total hater. I know that for a fact, and I just don't get it.
Get us back our sleeves.
And say, bring me that. That's the one I want. And welcome into Juckonbucks on a Monday. So happy to have you here with me, guys. I am getting ready to hop on a plane to to Chicago, then to Pasadena, because God forbid you could find a plane that could travel from Ohio to California without making you stop off somewhere. I know, ridiculous request. But anyhow, I'm getting on that plane, and that is something, because yesterday I was honestly thinking I was going to have to call this thing off. Like if the shape I was in yesterday was the shape I was in today, it would have been totally irresponsible. Like if I was sitting next to you or your mom or someone you loved with the coughing and the sneezing and the blowing of the nose, even with a mask on, like it just would have been so irresponsible of me to get on that plane. And I don't even know if I could have physically handled the travel the way I was feeling. It was bad, but we took a massive turn for the better overnight, and we're doing it. And I think come game day on Wednesday, I'm definitely going to be feeling back right again. My hope is to do a couple of shows while I'm out there. I'm bringing my equipment. I've got my little travel microphones. I'm going to try to kind of do a vlog style experience leading into the game. Then while I'm inside the game, I'm going to grab some interviews with some random fans from outside the game to share with you guys. So that's been the plan. We'll see if I have the energy to keep all that up. I hope that I do, because I really want to do that. That's something that I would like to get into, and I would probably like to do that, I think, a couple of times a year, traveling with the Bucks or just going to some random big games. But excited to get this nasty sickness behind me, get out there and see the sun. It's been a little while since I've seen the sun, so that'll be cool. And leading into this game, I've just been looking back at a lot of old stuff, a lot of old videos. I was just looking at the 2010 Rose Bowl, and that was a banger, man. 2010 Rose Bowl, the number 7 Oregon Ducks led by Chip Kelly, the number 8 Buckeyes led by Jim Tressel. Terrell Pryor was just a beast that game. The Ducks were 5-point favorites heading into that game, and I was trying to put myself back in the mindset of where I was when that game was played with the team, how I was feeling. We always have a different vibe, about the team. Sometimes we're not feeling in the greatest space mentally heading into the postseason. Sometimes we're feeling great. I think I was kind of lukewarm with that Buckeye team. I think I was pretty irritated with Terrell Pryor at the time, I think. But he showed out in that game. He did it all. He scrambled beautifully when he had to. Had that one, the one that sealed it was to DeVere Posey in the left-hand corner of the end zone. Was a beautiful ball. He had the one jump ball to Jim Ballard that wasn't a great pass, but Ballard sure got up and got that sucker. That was a huge, I think it was a 3rd and 10 play. And the Ducks were just loaded, man. Jeremiah Masoli, Kenyon Barner, LaMichael James, and LeGarrette Blount in the same backfield. That is one nasty backfield. But yeah, they were a 5-point favorite. I thought the Buckeyes would win. I was really nervous about it. And that was a great one. Back when a meaningless bowl game, meaning it doesn't have any significance to the national championship, which is what everybody calls every bowl game now, meaningless, that doesn't have any significance to the national championship. It still meant a lot, man. You could end the season with a Rose Bowl win in an otherwise disappointing season because it didn't have anything to do with the postseason. You felt really good in the offseason, and I kind of liked that. I really liked that. we talk about expectations and the incredible expectations that we have as Ohio State fans, that other teams that live in the stratosphere of programs like Ohio State have for their programs as well. And I'll tell you what, the meaningless bowl game has a lot to do with it. When you took away the satisfaction of being able to say, we had a good season, we won the Cotton Bowl, or we won the Peach Bowl, that was a good season. When you took that all away and it just became about the national championship or the playoff, it took a lot away. It took a lot away because you used to end the season with 5 or 6 programs feeling like they accomplished something, that they had a really good season. And you took it down and whittled it away to 1, maybe 2, the runner-up and the guy who wins the whole dang thing. Now, this probably expands now with the bigger playoff. I think that there's a whole lot more teams who will now feel that they have had a successful season, teams that otherwise would not have, now making the playoff can, I don't know, hang a banner for that. You would think a school like Arizona State after this, when you imagine they tout that, they made the playoffs. I think they would. Indiana, like they should celebrate the heck out of that. A team like an Ohio State or an Alabama is never going to pound their chest about making a 12-team playoff. It's just, it should be expected. And if you move to 14 teams and essentially a 9-3 season at an Alabama or an Ohio State or a Georgia, you're guaranteed to make it into the playoffs. You better not be pounding your chest about that, because 9-3 should be your floor at Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. But regardless, I'm just lamenting on bowl games and the way we used to view them, because the story I've been reading all day is about Cam Ward. Cam Ward, if you didn't hear, Miami's quarterback, who for most of the year looked like he was leading them to the ACC championship for the first time ever, which is still unbelievable. They've not won the ACC championship since they moved there from the Big East 20 years ago now. And they were playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So they went from probably winning the ACC and getting a bye in the first round of the playoffs to the runner-up in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, because they lost 42-41 to Iowa State. And they lost because Cam Ward only played the first half. And he played the first half so he could break a personal record of all-time career touchdown passing, which is an amazing record. I didn't realize he had that many touchdown passes in his career. And I certainly think that he should have played for that record. If I was him, I'd have played for it too. But if I was him, I'd have just gone ahead and played the second half and won the game for my team. Instead, he sat on the sideline and watched them lose by 1 point. And I get it. I know plenty of you are out there rolling your eyes at me. Whatever, man. We just view the world differently. I hate the me. I like the team. If you're going to play and go do it just for your own selfish reasons, at least give everybody else on the team the respect enough to play the rest of the game out for them. Like, it's just garbage, man. To me, it's just garbage. I would hate to play with anybody like that. I don't care if the entire season's success is because of that guy. Like, if that's the way you're going to treat me and let Iowa State celebrate in front of me at the end and lose by a point because you got this bum backup that hasn't played all year come in and he can't do anything, like, screw you, man. That's the way I feel about it. Now, I'm appropriately lubed up. Let's start the show. And we're going to start today by bringing in my buddy JR. JR from JR's Rankings, the voice of college football. JR is the man. Big Ten Huddle. He's got it all, man. I'm going to have him plug everything. He's on so much, I can't even keep up with him. He texted me. He's like, hey, I'm going to be recording from 8 to 10:45 in various platforms and shows. So let me know what time you want to record something. The guy's all over the place, but let's bring him in. My man, JR. Excuse the interruption. A quick reminder before we bring on JR, if you could please hit the like and subscribe button for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. And we welcome in my buddy JR from the Big Ten Huddle. JR, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here, Juck.
JR, we have not talked since the first round wrapped, and we were talking a little bit before the show, but you are a resident of Indiana currently, from Columbus, but you don't live too far from Bloomington, and you were kind of the Buckeye voice on the ground for Indiana. You told us all what was really going on there. You rooted hard for them, except for one game. And as you remember, I was rooting hard for them as well until I was on a call-in show with you on your show, and a cocky Indiana fan called in, and I'm petty like that. I just am. So Curt Cignetti pounded his chest heading into that playoff game. Talked about kicking top 25 teams' butts, and then made up that Nebraska was a top 25 team, and talked about beating Coastal Carolina when he was at James Madison. And then he went out and coached anything but like a hard coach. And I was embarrassed for him. He looked like a puppy dog after the game in the press conference. I think the entire mystique has been blown off, everything that is Curt Cignetti. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Honestly, when we did our post game of it, I kind of ripped Curt Cignetti too. I was like, dude, you want to talk this big game, and then you want to come out there and you have this opportunity to go for it on 4th and 10, and then you want to punt at the end of the game with 12 minutes left. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're not playing to win the game. You're playing to try and make it close. And he did make it close. I mean, at the end of the day, it was the closest margin of loss of any of the games, which is kind of crazy to think about because Indiana was probably the team that was dominated maybe the most, but their margin of loss doesn't look that way. But yeah, no, I mean, the way I look at it is Curt Cignetti was trying to invest in the moment as much as he possibly could, right? He was trying to talk. He was trying to get people to believe in him and do all this stuff. And he thought, maybe if we go out there and we give Notre Dame a good game and it's close, then people will believe us. Well, I think the talk kind of got cheap after the Ohio State game. That was when people kind of figured out, like, okay, this guy loves to talk, but he can't really back it up. And I still, I'm still rooting for Indiana a little bit. And I still kind of like Cignetti because I do think that he kind of brings a little bit of the bravado that, like, and Indiana needs, but at the same time, it's a little misplaced. I'm like, you didn't beat a single top 25 teams. You want to go on game day and talk about how you kick top 25 teams' butts? Like, maybe you kick 4 and 8 teams' butts, but yeah, you're not kicking top 25 teams' butts there. So yeah, it was weird. I mean, we'll see what happens next year. We did a video on if Curt Cignetti is the next Mel Tucker or not the phone call yank version, stuff like that, but the coaching version where he has one good year and then it all kind of goes away after that. I don't think he is because I think he has more experience. I still think he's probably gonna be around bowl eligible and stuff like that at the very least, but we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes 3-9 next year because they do have a pretty hard schedule in the Big Ten next year. I don't know what their out of conference schedule looks like yet, but we'll see. They got Roman Hemby, they got that dude from Cal, so who knows?
Yeah. I definitely don't think we have seen the next Big Ten power emerge. I think we saw a one-hit wonder. He might be, I think he'll be a decent coach for years to come and probably stick around there for quite a while and have success.
But he's good for Indiana, right? Like this is kind of what
I'm
Indiana needs, right?
Yeah, but I love seeing arrogance get its comeuppance, and that's what I saw. And shout out to our Indiana fan, if he's watching.
Terry.
He probably is because he follows you around. Terry. Shout out to Terry. Anyway, enough about the Big Ten and the playoffs in general. I want to talk about the Rose Bowl. Most people, I think, heading into this Rose Bowl after Ohio State's performance against Tennessee now think that we're looking at the two best teams left in this playoff playing in this game. Did you feel that way before the Tennessee game? Because I did. I'll tell you why. I think we all thought Oregon was definitely one of those two best teams. And the Ohio State-Michigan game to me was a total one-off. It was a game that wasn't played or coached like any of the other games. It was total coaching malpractice, in my opinion. And I don't think it was a representation of who that team was as a football team for the entire season. So when I was judging going into that Tennessee game, I was judging it on those 11 games. And yeah, maybe the hangover effect from the Michigan game would affect things. But as far as the quality of the football team, I still thought that Ohio State and Oregon were the two best teams even before that Tennessee game. Did you think so before? And do you think so now?
Yeah, I mean, going into the Oregon game, that's kind of what everybody was talking about, right? It was Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State. A lot of their national championships were there. You kind of had maybe a few people Texas, a few people Alabama, stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, it was generally Ohio State, Oregon, and Georgia that I was hearing people talk about for the national championship. And then when you saw Georgia struggle a little bit more against Kentucky and stuff like that, and then you saw them play against Alabama, you were like, maybe not so much. And so I did feel like going into the Ohio State-Oregon game that these were two of the best teams in the country. Probably the national championship was probably going to come from one of these two, but we'll see. I feel like now whoever wins this game is most likely going to win the national championship. I feel pretty good about that because you look at Texas. Texas has Quinn Ewers who's struggling. They have a very good defense, but they don't have a solid running back. What they have like 3 running backs get hurt in preseason camp or something like that. That was insane. And their offensive line has been good, but their offensive line also struggled against Georgia. So maybe you just face the right defensive line. In Texas, let's face it, like you can talk about Indiana's schedule and how terrible they were. Texas's schedule was awful. I mean, just completely awful. That Michigan game, propped it up a little bit for some people at the beginning, but it didn't look like that there at the end. So, they took care of them like they were supposed to. But, looking back on it now, like I think, or looking at it now the way I am, like I look at this Rose Bowl and this Rose Bowl feels like Ohio State, Georgia, right? From 2022, where whoever wins this game is most likely going to go on and win the national championship. I do have respect for Notre Dame and Penn State and Georgia on the other side of the bracket, whichever team comes out of there. But I think both of these teams can beat Texas or Arizona State, whichever one moves on. But let's face it, it's probably Texas. And then I think that they'll probably beat Penn State, Notre Dame, or Georgia, whoever moves on there as well. Heck, Ohio State and Oregon already beat Penn State, so if they move on there, they should beat them again. We'll see. But yeah, I think this Ohio State-Oregon game has so much juice, not just because it was the best game of the season we saw, not just because it's the 2 best teams, but also what it means for each coach, right? I mean, Dan Lanning last year, he loses twice to Washington. Can he avenge that and come back and beat Ohio State twice? Can he do what Kalen DeBoer did to him last year? Can he get that kind of monkey off his back of like, hey, I'm not just a one-trick pony in that game and made some good decisions, but I can actually go out and coach up a game and, beat Ohio State? And can Ryan Day beat the allegations? Those Michigan allegations aren't going anywhere, buddy. Like, you got to live with those for a little while, but, can he beat the allegations of not winning the big game? Can he take down Dan Lanning and then move on to the national championship? Do all that stuff. Like, more than anything, I look at this for the coaches and say, this is almost career defining at this point. And that is what's holding so much weight for me.
So I agree with you on the Day aspect of that. When we talk about Lanning, for me, this has been a smashing success in year 3. To come in, go undefeated, and win the Big Ten, even if he were to get bounced out in the first round. To me, I would still feather in the cap, man. Job well done. In the trajectory of the program for a couple of guys that follow recruiting as you and I, it's just top notch. There would be nothing but joy from the Oregon side, I don't feel, on his end. On the Ohio State side, yes, the Michigan thing, as you and I both kind of feel like it's a separate thing. You got the playoffs, and that's one thing, and that's great, and it's going to mean just as much to win that thing as it would, the Michigan game, but it's a separate deal. Just because you lose one or lose the other doesn't take away or give more credence to one or the other. It's 2 separate things, and we get to fight for both every year, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So he's not going to get out of that one, but should he get bounced after the win from Tennessee, the Tennessee game then means nothing, and then you're right back there with the bitter long off season. And, the tide turns right back around, and the grace that's the buyback that we have felt from a lot of the fan base from that Tennessee game, I think it kind of just gets kind of cast aside. Maybe not if it's a really close game, but if it's, if Oregon ends up winning by 2 scores or something, which I don't think is going to happen, but if it were to, I think we'd see a whole lot of vitriol, and it would be another, like you said, a very career defining game for Ryan Day. But when you look at this season, and we're talking about this playoffs in the bracket, obviously it's a wonky bracket, the way they seeded it, and the way we know we're going to have to deal with this next year too. Penn State's draw, getting SMU and then getting Boise. And I don't know about you, but I think they're just going to walk right through Boise. I don't think it's going to be a very contested game. It's basically a pass to the Final Four. As an Ohio State fan, I didn't want a bracket like that. I didn't want to draw like that. I wanted to go through the toughest teams and have the most battle-tested teams standing at the end of this thing and win the national championship. Ideally, going through Georgia, because I feel like we've been right there and just haven't been able to get through it. And I wanted to go through them. But the way it's lined up, being able to potentially go through Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and now whoever comes out of that side, because I think Penn State is now playing good enough to win this thing after getting those basically 2 first-round, second-round walkthroughs. And Notre Dame, I think they can too. And Georgia, they're always going to be Georgia. They're just the top talented team, the best coach team every time they take the field. Going through that gauntlet would just be so satisfying to me. And I prefer that to the walk that Penn State is walking right now. But if I was a Penn State fan, I'd be very happy with it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at the bracket and thought to myself, like, yeah, you have a little bit of an easier path, not a little bit, you have a lot of an easier path with Penn State going through SMU and Boise State. Like, that does look enticing because you really don't have to play a big game. But even for Ryan Day and his career and like what all the narratives are around him and all the talking points and everything else, like, he needs to beat the best of the best, not just in the national championship, but on the way there as well, because otherwise it's going to be, oh, well, he beat Boise State and SMU. Congratulations. And I think there will probably be a little bit of that with James Franklin. Like, if James Franklin makes it, say, they're going to beat Boise State, but say they play, I don't know, Georgia or Notre Dame next, whoever knows, and he loses that one, he's not getting any respect. Yeah, he got 2 playoff wins, but everybody's going to have an asterisk next to those playoff wins and say, yeah, he beat a group of 5 team and a team that was just a group of 5 a year ago and, had a good schedule that got themselves into the ACC championship game. And then the committee decided not to, punish anybody for their loss in the championship game. And, it feels good in the moment, but it's not going to extinguish the narratives. It's not going to extinguish what you really think about your coach. And I think that's the biggest thing with this, with Ryan Day, is he needs to extinguish the Michigan thing. We'll deal with that another year, right? But this year, this time, you got to take down the number 1 team in Oregon. You got to take down the team that in the SEC that thought they were just going to, take care of you because of your record in the SEC and all this stuff and everything. Mm-hmm. You got to take care of them. You got to take care of Texas, right? The other coach that calls plays and is kind of like Ryan Day, where he's an offensive mastermind and all this stuff, but he's got a good defensive team. Like, I see so many narratives in this bracket that I'm with you. Like, even if it's not so much the hardest teams to play, there's all the narratives. And I can't tell you what would be a more storybook ending, Juck, than if we saw Georgia in the national championship game and they win that game. I mean, I could die happy. I just right then and there. Yeah. I mean, I would like to live it for a little bit, but right then and there, I'd die happy. That'd be amazing.
I want to tell you, JR, like, I've been really, really critical of Day since the Michigan game. And I went to the Tennessee game and I just, I didn't even realize how bad I needed it until I felt it. Like, my gosh, it was just so great. And then watching some stuff afterwards and watching how he talked to the team before they ran out. It's like, we have been begging to see Ryan Day against Georgia, that version of Ryan Day, wherever that guy was, just to see him. We saw him that night. I'm going to play this real quick if anybody hasn't seen. Just him talking to the team for 10 seconds before they ran out in the field. I devour everything. He does not usually sound like this before they head out.
And that passion and that fire.
Man, take the fight to them. Take the fight to them. Play after play after play. You fight for everything you believe in. Each other. This program. We fight tonight. Fight on 3, 1, 2, 3.
Gives me chills, bro. I'd run through a wall for that guy. He was bouncing in the tunnel. Like, I want to believe in that guy, man. That's the guy right there. And if he can channel this, if it took all that angst he took for 3 weeks leading into that game to get that out of him, if he can keep that forward, if he can quit meddling so much in everything that Chip and Knowles do. We talk about the first game against Oregon and how I've been saying forever, you probably agree, it was a good thing that they had that game early in the year because of all the changes that they made defensively as far as getting pressure. And they weren't going to implement that had they not seen that early in the year, like, whoa, we got a problem when we go up against a couple of NFL tackles. We got a real issue. Our little simulated pressure, poorly executed simulated pressure games are not going to work. We have got to switch some things around. And credit to him, he went in, sat him down, and said, let's work on this. We're going to get it done. Now, I think we're seeing Jim Knowles uncuffed. You get after the Michigan loss, and I think we see Chip Kelly uncuffed. And I think that when we look at the other side of things, when we look at Lanning, great hire, by the way, like a guy who hired UTSA's offensive coordinator, Will Stein, to come in and believes in him and just gives him full control. Go do your thing. After Kenny Dillingham, right, gets his job, like this dude's got a great hiring track record already, but he just gets out of the way, tells him what he wants, and he gets out of the way. And I think Day meddles a little too much because he's just such a controlling guy, and I get it. But it feels like the more he releases and lets these guys do what he paid them to do, I think that that's when they're at their best. And I think that's what we're going to get in this Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could tell last year, right, when Brian Hartline was the offensive coordinator and, Ryan Day, obviously the head coach and everything going on there. I think you needed somebody with experience like Chip Kelly coming in and saying, Ryan, don't worry about it. Like, I got this. I've done this, been there, done that multiple times before. And I think you got that a little bit with Kevin Wilson too, right? Like Kevin Wilson had a successful time in Indiana for a little bit. I remember when he was there, he had the whole concussion thing, and that's why he left there. But then he came to Ohio State, and he was huge for Ryan Day. And I think a lot of it was him being able to trust Kevin Wilson, since with his head coaching experience, offensive coordinator, all this stuff, like with all that experience, for him to say, yeah, you go do your thing and you let it happen. And I think you're right also in the fact that, well, I've heard you say this on other shows, I think he also kind of gives some other coaches maybe a little bit too much of, well, maybe it was you or somebody else, but maybe too much of the voice to the coordinator as well, right? Is he really letting the coordinator do his thing, or is he saying, hey, Larry Johnson, you okay with that? Hey, Tim Walt, you okay? Like, is he really, you know what I'm saying? Like, is he going to all these guys and saying, are you okay with that?
I think there's definitely deference to Larry Johnson for sure. I think there's a whole lot of Larry's doing, don't mess with Larry's thing. I think there's a lot of that going on. But I think that this Oregon game actually kind of made that a situation that we all would like a little bit more.
I totally agree, and that was what I was thinking about when you were saying the thing about the offensive line and everything. I remember in the press conference, Jim Knowles' press conference, they were talking to JT, and it was very short. I don't even know if you caught it because I know you listen to the press conferences as well, but he said something along the lines of like, yeah, it didn't feel real to us that we could lose that game being to Oregon, until we finally lost it. And that said to me that, like, these guys just thought they were going to come into the season and bulldoze everybody over. Just take care of everybody. And I thought, there might be some of that there, but I also thought these guys are too mature. They're not going to do that. Like, there's too much on the line here. Never been to a Big Ten, like, never beat you out. Like, there's too much on the line here for them to think that. But when JT said that, it just like, shoot, everything that I thought they were too mature to think about is real. They thought they were just going to waltz on into Oregon. They didn't have to do no twists. They didn't have to do no stunt. They didn't have to do anything. They could just run forward, get to Dylan Gabriel, bring him down, and that would be that, all done. But they didn't. And I'm with you. I think they needed that wake-up call to be like, all right, yeah, we all are pretty much future NFL talent here. We still need a good scheme. We still need to listen to our coaches, and we still need to figure out what the heck we're doing, because just running forward isn't going to make it happen. We got to figure out what we're going to do, blitzing Cody Simon, stunts, whatever else it is. Like, we got to figure out those things as well, because there's a lot of other really good teams in college football, not just them, and the other really good team being Oregon.
When we look at that, well, looking at Oregon's maybe best games and not so great games this year, we look at them against Penn State, the rough defensive outing, Wisconsin pulling it out late, Boise, they weren't so hot against either, but that was so early. Same with Idaho. I don't really know that that's the same team we're talking about right now. Is there anything that you took away from the Penn State game or the Wisconsin game that you think the Buckeyes might be able to exploit offensively?
Yeah, I watched that Wisconsin-Oregon game in totality. I actually watched it twice because I really did just want to figure out, like, what in the world happened here. And I mean, a lot of it was like, Wisconsin's defensive line had the best game of the year, and Oregon's offensive line, for whatever reason, just couldn't handle them. I don't know if it was just all the travel or whatever it was, but their offensive line did not play well, and that really seems to be the catalyst for Oregon doesn't play well if their offensive line doesn't play well. So I think that's one of the biggest keys for Ohio State to beat Oregon is their defensive line has to outplay the offensive line of Oregon, but that's another conversation. The thing I honestly took out of this more than anything was Dan Lanning just about screwed it up. That fake field goal that they ran that gave Wisconsin the ball back. Thank God for them that Braden Locke can't throw a ball to save his life. I don't know why he's still in college football now. The dude is go do something else, dude. You can't throw a football to save your life. You're ruining Luke Fickell's career over there. But like he couldn't do anything. And I don't know if maybe that was a part of Dan Lanning's thought process. Like even if we don't get it here, they're not gonna. But that's still a really aggressive move there. It reminded me that the Dan Lanning we saw last year that could make a boneheaded, arrogant move is still in there a little bit. Yeah. And that's actually one of my biggest things in this game is how does Ohio State respond when Dan Lanning does something like that? Whether it's the kick, the fake onside kick thing that he did in the last game, whether it's a fake field goal, whether it's a fake punt, whatever it is, like, is Ohio State going to win that moment? I feel like this game is going to be decided by one or two of those moments where it's like Dan Lanning made a really, really aggressive call. I'm not going to say it's stupid because he's proven that if it works out, it's really, really smart. But Dan Lanning is going to make a really, really aggressive call. Is Ryan Day going to be able to snuff it out? Is Ryan Day going to be able to figure it out? Is the team going to be able to figure it out? Because guess what? If Kirby Smart hadn't snuffed out that fake punt against Ohio State, they probably win that game. Yep. So does Ryan Day have that in him that he can snuff out some of this stuff that Dan Lanning is going to do? Because we know Dan Lanning, it's a big game. Dan Lanning's going to do something crazy. It's either going to work out really well for him like it did, or it's not going to work out at all. And you have to react in that moment to make sure you do what is right. So that way you counteract Dan Lanning's craziness with, craziness of your own, whatever you got to do.
When we look at that first game, JR, I think it's one of these funny games where it was so close that even coming out of that game, and I can't stand these arguments, but you had both Ohio State and Oregon fans saying, well, it was only a 1-point game and we missed out on this, this, and this. And the other side saying, yeah, it was a 1-point game and we could have had this, this, and this much more. I was like, man, shut up. There's nuance to everything. Those teams both played really good and the cookies fell where they fell. It was a 1-point win for Oregon, and that's just it. I had to argue with Oregon fans for a while. They're saying they should have won by 17 because of the interception to Kaczmarek that was not reviewed. That was clearly an interception to me. Dylan Gabriel missing a wide open guy on 4th and goal, didn't throw in the ball, and he would never miss that 10 out of 11 times, but he missed it that one time. That's football.
Let me ask you this really fast. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you brought that up. That Will Kaczmarek thing. I kind of give some credit to Day for that, though. Like, Day realized that was an interception. If you remember, Day and Chip got those boys to the line, and they ran a play as quick as they possibly could.
They sure did.
I mean, obviously, like, yes, you still got out lucky there a little bit, but to be aware enough to be like, oh, yeah, that was totally an interception. We got to get to the line and run a play as fast as we possibly can right now. Like, I still give Ryan Day some credit there.
It's a good point. And Lanning could have called a timeout there. I mean, he would have been, wise to call a timeout there. So, you can give him a little pat on the back. He won that situation in Lanning's situational rule book, which he apparently has a lot. I did hear this week some people say that they think that his 12-man on the field thing wasn't really intended. It was a mistake, and then he was kind of, taking credit for it afterwards. I think it was totally on purpose. But then I also saw other people pointing out Ryan Day played right into his hands by pointing out 12 men to the official, which they would have caught that anyway. But that is one of those things that will just live on forever. It made me so mad at the end of that game, bro. It made me so mad. It made me so mad because I knew that it was just going to take on a life of its own. And we've heard about it ever since. And I'm sure it'll be brought up during the broadcast several times, which I won't be watching because I'll be at my first ever Rose Bowl, JR. I can't wait, bro.
Yeah, if I don't know who's doing the game. If Kirk Herbstreit's doing it, that makes me even more jealous of you because I don't want to listen to that dude for another second.
when we talk about these position groups, and I'm sure you did this, I did this, I think everybody who does anything on YouTube related to Ohio State did this at the beginning of the year. We all went through these position groups on the Oregon team and the Ohio State team and kind of picked who we thought had the better unit here, the better unit there. And I want to go through this with you and kind of tell you where I was at the beginning of the year and where I am now. And I'll start at quarterback. So I gave the nod to Dillon Gabriel. And to me, I thought it was pretty definitive. And that was with me factoring in that I thought Will Howard would improve with age, with more talent, with better coaching. I did not think he would improve as much as he has. I think he's gone, above and beyond what I could have even expected, or even imagined, really. I did not think he would be the type of quarterback who you could rely on to win you a game, which is what I think they just did against Tennessee. And he delivered in a huge moment. And I think we've seen a couple games like that this year. And the first game against Oregon was another one. I'll go to bat for him to the very end about that slide at the end of the game. He played a great game that day, and I was proud of him. I think it's a very slim margin now. I still do give it to Dillon Gabriel, but it is much closer than I thought it would be. Where do you stand on that?
Honestly, Juck, maybe it's the homer in me, and I try not to be a homer, but I give it a tie. Like, I give it a push, because as much as we've seen Will Howard make some boneheaded decisions and throw interceptions when he shouldn't, guess when Dillon Gabriel has thrown his interceptions? In the red zone.
Red zone. Yeah.
I mean, he's making some of his decisions that are the worst at the worst time in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I if I had to pick one, I would still, I'm like you, I'd give the slightest edge to Dillon Gabriel. But for me, it's close enough that I say it's a push. It's a tie between the two of them. You look at QBR, you look at stats and everything else, you look at all this stuff. They're very, very similar. I think Dillon Gabriel's got 400 more yards than him or something like that. But I mean, there for a while, I thought, okay, Dillon Gabriel has the deep ball over Will Howard. But man, I saw some of those throws that Will Howard threw in that Tennessee game. He may have found it. And if he found it, I'd take either one of them at this point, because both of them, they have their ups and they have their downs, but both of them can deliver. Both of them are great leaders. Both of them are experienced. At the end of the day, sometimes I think we just fight about it too much. Not me and you, but fans fight about it too much. And it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, they're both really darn good college quarterbacks, and you just got to take one of them. I'll take either one on my team.
Well, the stats to me are a wash. They really are. And when we talk about perception coming into the year, Will Howard had a ton of ground to gain. It was just assumed Dillon Gabriel was the dude. Will Howard was going to be the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the Big Ten. And I think everybody agrees that with 8 teams remaining in the playoff, these are your quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 in the playoffs. It's these two. They're number 1 and number 2. So that right there tells you how far Will Howard's come this year. Because I haven't seen anybody make it. I've seen a couple people want to put Drew Aller up at number 2 over Will Howard. But for the most, I've seen ranking these quarterbacks, it's 1 and 2 with, by the way, how about that? The 3 Big Ten guys, number 1, 2, and 3 quarterbacks in the playoffs. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
all right.
Tom Fornelli did his quarterback power rankings, and he had those 3 at the top. He had Dillon Gabriel, Will Howard, and Drew Aller, and then you can guess who was last, Gunnar Stockton.
Poor guy, man. I'm rooting for him. That's a cool story, though. Cool. He's a small town Georgia kid. Always wanted to play for the Dogs. I like it.
Right. He's getting to play for him.
Yeah, he's going to get his wish. All right, let's go to the offensive line. This to me was Oregon at the beginning of the year, but it was not by a huge margin. I thought Ohio State, as we were heading into the season, was going to kind of grade out as a top 6 to 7 offensive line in the country. And until that Oregon game, I think we were looking at a guaranteed top 5 offensive line in the country. And then obviously things fell apart. It's clearly Oregon right now. And I'm guessing you feel the same way.
I do. I mean, I think if you know, I mean, if and but whatever, like if McLaughlin and Simmons were still healthy, I'd probably go with Ohio State just because they were more consistent with those guys. But with your two best offensive linemen down, I mean, you know me, like nobody's gonna have more of a critic on Justin Fry than me. But
Mhm.
I do give him credit with the way he's been able, and I give Donovan Jackson a lot of credit for going out there to left tackle and performing the way he has this season. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to give it to Oregon. Like, there's just no other way about it.
Yeah, yeah. Wide receivers, I got some really hard pushback on this one at the beginning of the year when I did this episode from the Oregon fans because Jeremiah hadn't played a game yet when we were having this conversation. And my rationale was by the time Ohio State and Oregon play, Jeremiah Smith will be the best of all these guys we're talking about. And sure enough, he was and is now the best in college football at the position. And I think he is so much better than anybody else in the country that as good as Tez is, as good as Evan Stewart is, as good as Carnell and Emeka are, as good as Trayshawn and Brandon Innes are, you got one guy that is going to be an NFL Hall of Famer. And that's the dude on wearing the scarlet and gray. That's the better wide receiver core. It just is.
No, I totally agree. I no disrespect to Oregon's wide receiver
They're
core.
awesome.
Obviously, they did a great job against Ohio State the first time, right? Like, there's no disrespect at all. But you look at top end talent, it's Ohio State. You look at across the board talent, like I'd take Carnell and Emeka Buka over Trayshawn Holden, all those guys any day. So at the end of the day, like Oregon has, if not the second best, the third best wide receiver group in the country. It's just unfortunate for them. But Ohio State, once again, year in and year out, has the best wide receiver core in the country.
Defensive line. Defensive line at the beginning of the year, I took Ohio State. And now here we are at the end of the year, and I would take Oregon as my top defensive line in these out of these two.
I would go with a little bit more of a push. Oregon doesn't stop the run well enough for me. Oregon, they let obviously Ashton Genty in that early game, but even Wisconsin was able to run the ball a little bit on them. Some other teams were as well. Like, they're really good pass rushers, and Derek Harmon obviously is a beast in the middle there, but I just don't think they stop the run well enough for me. And I think Ohio State's defensive line stops the run really well. So in terms of pass rushing, I definitely give it to Oregon over Ohio State. But in terms of run stopping, I give it to Ohio State over Oregon. And so if those are your two factors you look at there, I look at it and I say push. But if I had to pick one, I would pick Oregon. But that's just the way I look at it.
You have to. We're checking you for JR. There's 6 groups. You can't push on 2 of them. All right.
Maybe I'm a homer. Call me a homer. It is what it is.
We're going to linebacker, and I picked Ohio State in the beginning of the year with this one. And I thought that we were going to see Sonny Styles emerge into quite the star. And he has taken his lumps. It took a while. I still think we should have seen more Arvell Reese all year. I think we would have seen maybe better things happening for the line. But Sonny is the dude who I thought he was going to be. I think he's developed into that guy. Got a little ways to go still. Oregon's linebacker room has not been sensational. The Buckeyes, I do still believe, have the better linebacker core, and I think the stats represent that as well. They've just the Oregon crew, they've had some personnel changes here and there. It's not been great. And I thought it was going to be better than it was. It's been probably the poor spot on their defense.
Yeah, and that's been what's led to some of the inability to stop the run. Not inability, but lack of run defense at times for them has been the linebackers as well. I agree with you. I have to go with Ohio State linebackers. But I mean, no disrespect to the Oregon linebackers. They've done a good job. I don't think that they're like awful or anything like that. I just think Cody Simon and Sonny Styles, especially Sonny Styles, has really emerged, and you just have to take those two guys over there.
Yeah, and Cody, I mean, I just feel like he's just the most unbelievably underrated player on the Ohio State football team. Guy gets no shine at all, and he probably likes it that way, but he's so good, man. He's just so good. Secondary. I gave it to
Yes.
Ohio State in the beginning of the year. I'm sticking with that. I still believe when we take in the entire secondary that Ohio State has a better secondary. And I think, much to my Jeremiah Smith argument, when you have a top 5 talent in your group, unless you're really lacking in the other areas, it's generally going to propel you into being the best unit. And Caleb Downs is that. So I'm going with the Buckeyes.
I go with the Buckeyes too, and it's not so much about the cornerbacks because they obviously had a tough game, especially Denzel Burke in the last one. But it's the safeties more than anything. I mean, these guys can do whatever you want them to do. Caleb Downs is a tackling machine. Lathan Ransom is one of the most underrated safeties in the entire country. I don't know if you saw this, Juck, but I put out some stuff on the Big Ten Huddle Twitter account at one point. Lathan Ransom, according to PFF, was actually the highest graded player on the entire Ohio State team this season, which is
Wow.
crazy to me. Now, I'm not, a PFF's grade truther and saying everything they say is
Mhm.
right, but I do think they're an analytical point that you have to look at for some of their stuff, and I thought that was really interesting. So, yeah, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, they put it over the top for me, secondary Ohio State.
Hypothetical scenario, JR. Joe Castiglione, longtime Oklahoma athletic director, retires tomorrow, and Oklahoma called you up and they're hiring you. Congratulations. You are the new athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. Immediately, you fire Brent Venables because he's a turd, and you're going on your coaching search. You get a couple of calls from a few agents, and they're putting out feelers. One represents Ryan Day. One represents Dan Lanning. Sounds like you got your choice. Who you going with?
I'm hiring Dan Lanning.
You're hiring Dan Lanning. All right.
Hiring Dan Lanning. I mean, he,
Now-
like you said toward the beginning, like he exudes what it is as a head coach. I want Ryan Day to be that, but Dan Lanning exudes it. He gives it off. He has that leadership aspect to him.
All right. Now you're Dan Lanning, and you've got to pick your offensive and defensive coordinator to run your team. You need a new offensive and defensive coordinator for the Sooners. You're not going to go with Venables' crew. So you've got a young up-and-comer from the University of Texas, San Antonio. And here's a little clip of him talking about his offensive philosophy.
We want to be the most physical team on the field. Okay, we want to be a violent football team running the football. 2, get your best players the ball as many times as possible. We say feed the studs. That's our way to say it. It's not rocket science. Coach said it earlier. Plays are highly overrated. I'm going to talk spacing. They're great plays, but it's overrated. If we got trash players, they don't look as good. So get your players the ball as many times as you can. We want to throw the ball down the field, right? We say 2 times a quarter. That's 8 a game. That's minimum shots down the field, okay? Then 4, it says mixed formations, shifts, motions, and tempos. The day of going fast all the time is, I don't want to say it's over because it's not, but we like to set the pace on offense. Whether that's huddle, whether that's sugar huddle, whether that's straight tempo, turbo menu, whatever that is. So be able to change the pace of the game is critical.
All right, so that's your up-and-comer. That's your young, hungry guy. You're looking at him. You really like what you hear. And then you've got an old, wonderful mind in Chip Kelly coming off a head coaching stint of 15 years, and he just wants to get back to coaching ball. Who you picking to build your team?
I mean, like I've been satisfied with Chip Kelly, but I got to be honest. Like some of the stuff like you've talked about on your show has been what I'm thinking too. Like, why in the world are we running so slow? Like, why in the world? Like, it seems like to me this Will Stein guy, he just gets it more. Where he's like, we got the dogs, we're gonna run them, and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna win the game. I don't know if it's Ryan Day, I don't know if it's Chip Kelly, but because of that kind of stuff that is frustrating me, I got to go with Will Stein over Chip Kelly, which sounds so wrong, right? Like Chip Kelly, he was an offensive genius for all these years and he did all these amazing things, but the way I look at it, like it feels like Will Stein is the better option over Chip Kelly.
There is a real feeling that you can get when you know so much. And we've seen with a lot of older coaches, it's just like paralysis by analysis, man. You just know it all. You've seen it all. And when you listen to just someone with this basic philosophy, and he's just going to do what it is he does. And boy, nobody does, running all the different motions and patterns and shifts and everything they do pre-snap. Like, it's a pain in the butt to install. Nobody does it better than Oregon. They put so much eye candy out there that it's frustrating as hell. It's hard to practice. It's hard to implement, but you do it and it works for them. They operate it flawlessly. 2 shots a quarter minimum. Like, get your studs the ball. It's just basic stuff, right? But the way he runs an offense, I love it, man. I think it's the best going out there. But more so, and I think we miss this a lot, and we've had coaching conversations, a lot recently in the Buckeye sphere. And I think that there is this mindset that really paralyzes Ohio State fans into thinking that it's not a good hire unless it comes from another blue blood. When in fact, when you can find a diamond like that, an up-and-comer that's hungry and young and aggressive to build his name, that is what you're looking for. That's the risky hire. That's the one that you can hit a grand slam or ground out to second. Like, it's risky, but my gosh, when it works, you're seeing the fruits of that. And a guy like Dan Lanning at Oregon hiring a guy from UTSA, that's a risk. That's a big step up. That dude was coaching at Lake Travis High School a couple years before that interview right there. He knocked it out of the park with that, man. And the good news for us as Buckeye fans is he's going to get a head coaching offer real soon, probably from a decent school. Bad news is Dan Lanning's track record hiring support staff is almost flawless. I mean, we all love Carlos Loughlin. You know what I mean? Like, the dude has done a phenomenal job, and he's done it by not making these safe, old, stodgy, reliable Bill O'Brien, Chip Kelly type of hires. Not that I think Chip Kelly was the perfect fit for Ryan Day. You know what I mean, though? Like, going a little off the beaten path and going and getting in there and finding the next best. And I think that that's something that I would like to see our program embrace as well as we move forward. Obviously, James Laurinaitis hiring him was a no-brainer, and that's great. Like, that's the direction I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm with you. I would also go with, if I'm Castiglione, I would hire Dan Lanning. And if I was Dan Lanning, I would hire Will Stein. If I was Ryan Day, I'd hire Chip Kelly, but that's because of the personal relationship. Though I don't know until this season's over yet if we can really tell, ultimately the end, we won't be able to say until the end of the season, but year one of those two together, and we'll never truly know, but how well did it work? How well did they work it behind the scenes? Who was pushing more? Who was pulling more? You know what I mean? Like, these things we'll never know. I think we can make arguments to try and see, okay, here's where Chip was more involved. Here's where Ryan held him back. It might come on whatever viewpoint you come at it with, though. I don't know, man. What do you think right now? Would you pick the Buckeyes to win the national championship heading into this game?
To me, it all comes down to this game. If they win it, and they win it the way that I think they should, guns a-blazing, going crazy, like the fast tempo, like all that kind of stuff. If they win it that way, then yeah, I think Ohio State wins the national championship. But if they win this game, getting lucky, maybe by some bad decisions of Dan Lanning or something, like looking at the way it is, like if they don't win the game, if Dan Lanning loses the game, I think they're still the favorite, but I don't feel great about it, right? Like, I have to think that if this team is going to win the national championship, Ryan Day has to win it himself. He can't ride on other people losing the game for him. And to me, like, that's what I want to see in this game more than anything. Can Ryan Day grasp it and say, we are winning this game? Can he be that type of dude? Can he be that type of head coach? I don't know. We'll have to see if it happens.
Will Howard played some great games this year. And when you're playing a team that is as good as Oregon is, you need your quarterback to be a dude. And I think that if we see them trust in Will Howard to be that dude, like they did against Tennessee, and they don't turtle up and say Oregon's a little bit better than Tennessee. We can't quite let it all hang out. We got to rein him back a little bit. I think if they just embrace what they did against Tennessee moving forward, obviously there will be tweaks to every game plan, but the aggressive style, letting him just taking the reins off of him, making sure that there is absolutely no way Jeremiah is not involved consistently throughout the game. I don't care about anybody else, man. That is one dude that needs touches. He needs targets. He's the biggest mismatch on any field you're ever going to be on with him. If they can embrace those things, I don't see anybody beating him, and I think they're going to embrace these things. And that's why I've got the Buckeyes winning 38-31 in the Rose Bowl to advance and give me one of the best Wednesdays, I think, maybe of my entire life. How many great Wednesdays do you have, bro? Not too many memorable Wednesdays. This one will be one.
Yeah, I think they're gonna win too. But I think it's gonna be more defense. I don't think they're gonna get up into 30s in this one. I think that Ohio State's defense learned a thing or two in this one, and I think that the offensive line for Ohio State isn't going to be good enough to propel them to 30 points. And so at the end of the day, like, the defense kind of lost the game for them last time. That was kind of the narrative that came out of it. I think the defense bounces back in this one and kind of wins the game for them. So I got Ohio State 24-22. Dan Lanning will do something crazy. He's not going to score 21 points exactly. Something crazy will happen, and I think we come out of this one, feeling good about Jeremiah Smith, feeling good about Will Howard. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Jack Sawyer play or a Caleb Downs play that really seals the game, and we look at this defense and they get the redemption. Maybe I'm thinking too much storyline. I don't know. But I look at this one and I say the defense is just too good to let them get past 30 again. And if Ohio State's offense can just do enough, they'll win this one.
That's philosophically the way I saw it kind of shaken out too. And then I always kind of have to check myself and say, all right, bro, how many times have we seen these big games in championships or in the playoffs? And I think this, and then it's just like the offenses are just better than the defenses in these big games. And it just feels like they so often get into the 30s. And then we talk about two really high octane offenses when they're really clicking and going for it. And I also think that the Buckeyes are now going to mess with some tempo more, get another 5-6 plays than their average of about 60-61. And that's when I started creeping up in the scores, and maybe I'm going a little crazy going 69, but I hope that's what it is, because when you're at a game, it's always more fun to see more points. But,
totally. If I were going to the game, I'd be hoping for the same thing.
All right, JR, thank you so much for joining me today, buddy. I appreciate you. Everybody, check out JR at JR's Rankings on Twitter in the Big Ten Huddle to see all his exclusive content. JR, thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Talk to you later, bud.
See you.
And a big thanks to my buddy JR. Always a fun conversation when I have him on. And I notice now that I've been doing this for a little bit of time, the people I have on consistently and I get a little rapport with, it gets a little more comfortable. And I think the conversations go a little better than at first. Boy, I was so nervous when I would have a guest on. So it's all rigid and stiff. And like this question. I think it comes off a little better when it's a little more free flowing. So things are moving up, guys. I think we're getting better at this. But JR, also a YouTube member, which you can be a YouTube member on the Juckonbucks channel if you would like to do that. Get you early access to all the videos, as well as some members-only videos where I tell you the real story. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I got a couple more things to get to. Now, we know that the Penn State game, maybe you didn't know this, that there is a claim that a lot of the Oregon staff and team has had a big illness going through it. And some are blaming the subpar defensive effort in the Big Ten championship game. Penn State rolled up 500 yards of offense on them to an illness that was going through the team. Now, I don't know how valid that is, but I do know that coaches love when they win a big game and they can get on one side of the ball really, really hard and not sound like total maniacs because they just played a great game. So the defense doesn't play so great. And it sounds to me like Dan Lanning and defensive coordinator Tosh Lapoy have been getting on that defense. Here's a listen from them.
Doing a good job. Yeah, I think, we have a clear focus of what we're trying to accomplish. And, like I've said before, that everybody has an assignment, everybody has a job, they got to do their job.
Yeah, the only thing I can say in regards to that is the way we practice, so we had an extremely physical week last week, and practicing the right way, the thud mechanics, the physicality, tackling in space, there's no substitution for the game. So it's how we practice, how we prepare, and got to continue that trend this week if we're going to be successful come Wednesday.
Definitely some Ducks have been getting yelled at recently, and I love to see it. What I don't love to see is football team plays subpar game, fan base gets media criticism. Tired of hearing that, and here was the latest example of that.
These Ohio State fans, they got a psychotic obsession with Michigan.
No surprise to him, I'm sure. He coached under Woody Hayes.
And they need to go get therapy or something to try to get it fixed because they have a chance to win the national championship. And here you are, nobody's excited about their opportunity to play because they, lost to Michigan, which was a tough game, and they lost.
It just means more here, man. I don't know what to tell you. It just means more. To JJ, how often do you think about that play, that offensive pass interference play at the end of the Oregon game?
Colin, you're feeling about that?
Yeah, I think about that call probably every day. It was a crazy call. The DB was holding me. I just cleared his hands. I guess receivers can't be physical in football anymore, but DBs could hold 10 yards, 15 yards down the field. So, it's behind me. I just know how to move here on out. When the DB is grabbing me, I just know how to move now. Can't be physical as a receiver in college football anymore, but. We'll just see how things play out this game.
It is behind him chronologically. It happened in the past. He's not over it yet, though. That's for sure. He thinks about it every day, and I like that. I like a hungry JJ. I like that he thinks he wasn't wrong, and I like that he is now coming into his own voice, and we're hearing him talk a little more on things. This guy's going to be a show, man. It's already a show, but it's just going to keep getting better. So I love it. All right, guys, time to pack up the laptop, pack up the lights, pack up the mic and my travel mics that I got. I'm heading out to Pasadena. The next time you see me, I'll be from out there. Can't wait. Talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you so much. Please like and subscribe. Juckonbucks out. He needs his vote polled immediately. And I'll say, I don't care. The leader, the boss. Where is Josh Heupel? The largest humans he can find. You got Miami and Georgia and Florida State and Tennessee and Texas A&M. Kirby wants you. LSU and Ole Miss. Not even a football player, but he's 6'10", 334. Kirby said, sign me up. That's all they've got to offer when it comes to a defensive player. What could they possibly say other than, how down do you have to be for a win? Let us pay you. All they got to be is enormous. What could they possibly say? Knock the team out west. Oh, well. He'll take them if they're lowly rated, too. I'm not some guy who's some Big Ten homer. Behind that, I will never find it acceptable. I want to see it, man, because they've got nothing else to go on.